Hello and welcome back to Hudson Auto Films. As you can see, you join me on a very bright and crisp English morning. And next to me is our 1973 Ford 3000. And as you can probably tell by the shade of green it's turning, it's been here for quite a long time. In fact, it's been here for over a year, and the goal of today's episode is to get it moving. A year or so ago, I endeavoured to cut down all of the weeds on the land. Unfortunately, after a couple of laps, we started steaming, the engine overheated, and this is where it stopped. After letting everything cool down, checking and topping up fluids, I couldn't really work out what had happened. But one thing that was for certain is it wouldn't start again. Initially, I thought it had seized because I couldn't even get it to turn over. However, now it does certainly turn over, but it won't fire at all. This led to me getting frustrated, and subsequently it has sat for a year. As other projects have taken priority, the field has been really marshy because of the weather over the last few months, so it has just sat. Other than catastrophic engine failure, the only thing I thought it could be is maybe the battery, which was very old, wasn't cranking it fast enough to fire it up. Especially with these old diesel ones, they do need quite a lot of power to get them going. But other than that, we've got good fuel, fluid. As a lot of you will know, these things are kind of hard to kill. So if I've done that, I'd be very shocked. So I'm hoping we'll put a new battery in it and it'll fire to life. If that happens though, it will be the first time that's ever worked. So let's make a start. Seeing as we're putting a lovely, nice, new, expensive battery in, I'm going to clean this disgraceful battery tray. I'm using wheel cleaner, so should do the trick. I think for today that is going to have to do. Oh, bloody hell. There's a lot of spiders in here. Okay, so I think the next thing is we're just going to try fire it up and see what happens. If this works, I'll be very shocked. She sounds like she's close, believe it or not. She's alive! Okay, so in typical fashion, it has made it about 30 meters and then it started steaming again. The steam disappeared immediately, so as soon as I've turned on the camera, it's disappeared. The radiator feels pretty cold. Where's it coming from? Why? And now it won't turn over again. I've let it cool for a minute, so let's just see. I'm going to try and get it back to the barn, and then at least we can appraise it not from the middle of a field. So I'm not sure if you can hear me or anything right now, but we're going to get it back to the barn. It's getting very smoky in here too. Not good. Well, we got it back. but she's smoking. Okay, so it is a new day. As you can tell, the stress has made my whole beard fall out, so please do excuse that. As you saw yesterday, I got it back to the barn, but we were getting plumes of smoke out of the oil breather pipe. My first thought was bad piston rings, which obviously means completely dismantling the engine to replace them. The silver lining is a rebuild kit for one of these is kind of only £300-400, which in the way of things is quite affordable. However, the labour involved in rebuilding this is not something I particularly want to do right now. And the only thing which didn't quite sit right with me is it had no issues beforehand. If it was already a bit smoky, that would make sense. But in my head, piston rings don't just kind of go. You know, it's kind of a slow process. So I decided to put the question to a few of the forums, and the majority of people seem to think that it was water in the oil. Obviously, this has been sitting for a while, so even if water hadn't directly got in, condensation, all of that sort of build-up is quite common in these. And in typical Ford 3000 bulletproof advice, the advice was run it hard, and boil all of that water out. So I think that's what we're going to do. The other secondary piece of advice or theorised problem was when these sit for a long time, the rings get bunged up and kind of aren't bedded properly. So again, running it is the way to solve that. As someone who works typically on cars, and not fragile cars, but even just kind of Land Rovers and things like that, when you've got a problem like this, the suggestion usually isn't run it and run it hard. So I feel a little bit jarred, but we are going to take the advice of the people who know far better than I do. Before we do that, I'm going to quickly pump up the tyres, check fluids, and then let's cut this field and hope this thing doesn't blow up. Okay, so we're only a lap in and the PTO has decided to wreck its bolts. So we have no topper right now, so I need to go figure out some new bolts. Let's see how long that one holds. Oh. Well, here we go again. Starts a lot easier. Cock. Now it's completely kaput. tractor makes no sense. Well, in technical terms, the engine is fucked. Even though I'm sure the advice I was given by the forums works in some cases, unfortunately it didn't work in this case. As you saw, I did a couple of laps in the tractor and the knocking started and we lost power. I did have my ear defenders on, so the knocking might have been present for a little bit longer. They have great ear defenders, I couldn't hear anything. But ultimately, we have a knock. The knock isn't particularly audible when you're kind of just at an idle, but when you are putting it to work and the revs are higher, it is very present. And as you also saw, I did start it up again. Even though I'm fully aware turning it back on with a knock is never a good thing, I had no choice but to do so because I had to move it back to the barn. I couldn't leave it just in the middle of the field. I've nothing to tow it out with regardless, and towing it out of a marshy field, if I could even find something, would have been a complete nightmare. On the way back to the barn, it repeated exactly the same symptoms. Obviously, I'd let it cool down for about 5 minutes and it started right back up as if nothing was wrong. I was then driving it back. It felt just as powerful as ever, it felt good, and then it slowly died. I managed to get it back, and don't worry, it's not going to be turned on for a while. Even though running it that last time definitely didn't do any good to the engine, I had to get it back to the barn, and honestly, I don't think it's particularly worsened the engine any more than it already was. And ultimately, even if it has, the outcome for us is exactly the same, and that is an engine rebuild. I did go back to the forums with a short video clip emphasising the noise and a few of the symptoms, and basically everybody had a different idea of what it was. Basically, all in all, the engine's buggered and it needs to be rebuilt. My gut says it's the rings. It sounds like ring slap, if you'll pardon the pun, but regardless, we just have to pull this engine out, rip it apart, and we'll find out soon enough. So indeed, in typical fashion, putting a new battery on didn't solve the engine issues. And now, from experience, I wouldn't pass on the advice that if you have smoke coming out of your breather, to run it and run it hard. But when I started this video, I was pretty sure the engine needed rebuilding because the rings were bad. And as we finish this video, the engine needs rebuilding because I think the rings are bad. So, you know, we've made it a long way. So very soon you'll see me pulling the engine out of this and stripping it down and rebuilding it back up. And then hopefully we'll have a fully functional tractor again. The great thing about these is the rebuild kits are very affordable, and obviously these engines are pretty straightforward to rebuild. So that'll be a nice project for the channel. I also know that when the engine's out and it's partially stripped down, I'll want to do a lot more. So I need to figure out kind of what line to stop at. This tractor has great patina in certain areas. There's certain areas where I think it is beyond patina and it's just ugly. So I'd love to hear your advice on exactly how far we should take this. I know for a fact when you get rid of all of the green that has grown on it, the blue paint is very nice and polishes up well and looks cool. I think the white maybe just is a bit too far gone. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I know the last couple have been a little bit different. Right now we're making a lot of progress on the 4x4 Aston behind the scenes, but whilst that's going on, I thought I'd tackle a few other things that I needed to address. And also I might have accidentally purchased something else, which you will be seeing probably in the next 10 days. I'll give you a clue. It has a distant relation to Aston Martin modifications, and it was £250. It's British, it's got a lot of fiberglass on it. It used to be something else, and you're never going to guess it. So lots of fun to look forward to. If you enjoyed this video, and even if you didn't, please like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that sort of thing. It really does help me out. And if you'd like to support the channel further, I've linked my Patreon down below. Over on the Patreon, I have a bunch of behind the scenes content, early access, kind of day-to-day updates on things, and you know, you see a bunch of other things I'm working on that you might not see on the channel. But regardless, I'm just grateful that you're here. So until next time, take care, and I'll see you then.